When you're talking about the dark fantasy genre in anime and manga, the name Berserk is inevitably going to pop up in conversations. One of the most iconic and influential works in any medium in any subgenre of fantasy, Berserk is the piece de resistance of the late legendary mangaka Kentaro Miura. The manga series was published in 1989 and was unfortunately put on hiatus following the tragic, untimely death of its author. However, Berserk picked up again recently under the direction of Miura's best friend, Kujimori, to whom Miura is said to have divulged his plans for Berserk right down to its ending. The series has seen a number of anime adaptations that cover various events from the manga, with the first one coming out in October 1997 and running for a total of 25 episodes until March 1998. This anime covered the Golden Age arc of the anime that deals with Guts' introduction to Griffith and the Band of the Hawk, along with events leading up to their betrayal and Griffith's ascension as Femto, a member of the God Hand. For those who are unfamiliar with the meaning of the God Hand or the ascension we're talking about, we'll cover them later in the video as they are intricately tied to our topic for today. There would also be a trilogy of films that would be released between 2012 and 2013 that would once again cover the events of the Golden Age arc. A second anime adaptation of the series would come out and would run between 2016 and 17 for a total of 2 seasons, with each season being 12 episodes long. The first season would cover the manga's Conviction arc, while the second would cover the first half of the Millennium Falcon arc. After a long drought in anime content for Berserk, Studio Eclipse has recently announced that they're working on Berserk's Black Swordsman arc due sometime in the summer of 2025. We've done a highly detailed trailer breakdown for that on our channel already, which we recommend you check out after this video. Through Berserk, Kentaro Miura has created a grim, dark world with a medieval setting that would serve as not just the benchmark but inspiration for countless other works set in this subgenre of fantasy. The characters that would inhabit these godforsaken lands would be equally intriguing and tragic, but none more so than Guts, the protagonist of this series. This giant of a man with his greatsword, Dragon Slayer, cuts an iconic figure in anime and manga which transcends genres and eras. The Struggler, as he is known, and his epic quest for vengeance against his former leader Griffith as he struggles against his own inner demons and the laws of causality that govern his world, constitutes the majority of the storyline for this series. This is, however, not what we're here to talk about today. We'll discuss the laws of causality in a different video as it can be a confusing concept, especially for someone looking to get into the series. In Berserk, while you might not always find the divine, you will nonetheless find a variety of supernatural beings and themes representative of evil that are explored through the length of the series. From fairies and evil spirits to human-devouring monsters called apostles that exist in plain sight, paranormal activities are the norm in this world. For the topic of our video today, we're going to explore the mysterious items known as Behelits or Behelits that play an exceptionally important role in the story of Berserk. These are otherworldly objects that appear to the people that have been destined by causality at the moment of their greatest need. Their fates are intricately woven into the destiny of all inhuman beings known as apostles and the God Hand, along with the people who have come across them and are marked with the brand of sacrifice. Their design perfectly encapsulates the esoteric horror that permeates throughout the series. In fact, it is this item that's responsible for kicking off Guts' journey of vengeance, and without it, a majority of the plot lines and characters, especially the antagonists for the series, just wouldn't exist. They also have a very important role to play in the cosmology of the series, which we'll discuss as well. We'll be discussing the origins, powers, owners, variants, and the role of Behelits in the greater lore of Berserk, and much more. In this video, we hope to increase our knowledge and yours regarding not just this enigmatic item, but also the dark forces that govern the world of Berserk. So without further ado, let's explore these egg-shaped relics and everything there is to know about them, while hoping we don't accidentally trigger their activation. What is the origin of a Behelit? Like most things supernatural in the world of Berserk, the nature and origins of Behelits are steeped in mystery and esoteric reasoning. We see a number of individuals wielding them, and they vary in shape, size, and color, all of which we'll discuss in this video. This is why nobody, including mages and witches who study the astral plane, are aware of the nature of their creation. We can, however, piece together information offered to us throughout the manga to form an educated opinion on the subject, and even come up with a few theories of our own. In Chapter chapter 83 of the manga, we witness Griffith descending down through the various astral planes during the events of the Fifth Eclipse. The Fifth Eclipse, for those of you who are new to Berserk, is an event that sees the enactment of a ritual during which Griffith's Crimson Behelit activates and summons the God Hand, trapping his former comrades, the Band of the Hawk, including Guts and Casca, inside a pocket dimension. Griffith then completes the ritual by sacrificing all of his comrades present, including Casca and Guts, who luckily escaped due to an enigmatic entity called the Skull Knight's intervention. Griffith does this to transcend humanity and join the ranks of the God Hand, a pantheon of beings that are referred to as demons or angels depending on who you ask. In the Lost chapter of Berserk, it is explained through Griffith's experience that a Behelit is the last teardrop shed by an individual being crystallized. The entity that we know as the idea of evil tells the audience and Griffith that they are splashes, droplets of ideas that have spilled from this sea to eternity, summons to the other world. What we can surmise from these lines is that the Behelits are created in the depths of the abyss through the powers of the idea of evil before they're launched into eternity through space and time to make their way into the hands of their owners due to the laws of causality. This chapter, though, has since been retconned, hence why it's known as the Lost Chapter of Berserk. It revealed a little too much, a little too quickly regarding the overarching evil and the nature of things in this universe. We have seen several theories floating around amongst fans like Behelits being created using the heads of witches like Flora and Shirke. Others believe that they're created by Void, another member of the God Hand who is presumed to have been a wizard before his ascension. The Behelits are described as fetishes, which means magical objects created by mages, which have led to the creation of the aforementioned theory that it was Void who created them. However, this is mostly headcanon and hasn't really been confirmed by anyone. It's for this reason that regardless of the fact that chapter 83 of the manga is considered non-canon now, a lot of us still go by that origin theory until the time we get a proper origin from Kujimori, which doesn't seem too likely at this point. The Astral Realms of Berserk. To understand how Behelits work, we must first understand the cosmology and metaphysics that exist in the world of Berserk. These astral realms coexist at the same time as the physical realm, and it is said that there are roughly 4 layers. The Astral Realm is also known as the Realm of the Dead by the Elves, and houses a number of creatures and beings that would be considered denizens of legends for an ordinary mortal. The Interstice, or the In-Between, forms the first layer where the boundaries between the astral and physical realms are the murkiest. Those who dwell in the interstice exist at a crossroad where the physical realm meets the astral realms. As such, they don't truly exist only in the physical realm like most mortals do. The inhabitants of the interstice seem to include those marked by the brand of sacrifice, like Guts and Casca, along with the witches Flora and Shirke. The realm of Clipoff is home to creatures like the ogres and trolls. It also lies on the cusp between the interstice and the divine realm, the strata of the astral realm just beyond the interstice. The divine realm is the realm where the eclipse ceremony is said to take place, although this is debated and lies just above the vortex of souls. Here, according to Flora, the beings known as angels and demons or gods in polytheism reside. We believe the 4 elemental kings reside in this strata of the astral plane. Below the vortex of souls lies the abyss. Deep within the abyss resides the idea of evil, which is represented by a massive human heart with several eyes on it. It says that it was created by the collective will of the human subconscious and is responsible for the creation of the Behelits and the members of the God Hand. It is the closest to the idea of a god that we ever get in Berserk. According to Flora, within a remote pocket of the abyss exist the members of the God Hand, who influence the rest of the astral plane and the physical world. The denizens of these various layers can only travel between 2 layers above or below their own. This means that the God Hand can only travel up to the divine realm, and someone like Guts who exists in the interstice can travel all the way down there as well if they learned how. The problem for most beings like witches or Guts is that they could technically travel to the different strata, but returning would be difficult, if not outright impossible. It's fairly complicated, and there are some debates regarding the boundaries and names of these astral planes. Some argue that the physical realm has to be included when making a tier of the astral planes. There are others who debate about how Clipoff actually exists within the interstice and isn't in the cusps at all. There is also an argument that Clipoff is a separate tier of the astral realm in and of itself. Going further, some people theorize that the God Hand and the 4 kings do not reside in the abyss, but in the region between the vortex of the souls and the nexus. With Kentaro Miura unfortunately no longer around, there is little to no chance of having a definitive answer to all of these questions. That said, none of these things, including the laws governing traversal through the astral planes, matter anymore after Griffith's incarnation into the physical world. With the events of the Great Roar of the Astral World, where Griffith redirects the astral tear from the Sword of the Behelits to hit the twice reincarnated Emperor Ganesha, the fabric's existence dimensions is ripped open, and the astral realm spills over into the physical. This results in the creation of the world of Fantasia, where the astral and the physical world are now merged together as one. This means that the God Hand and beings like the Four Kings, along with the rest of the denizens of the astral realm, can freely roam the physical world. What is the true nature of a Behelit? Its activation, usage, and limitations explored. These egg-shaped magical fetishes, which are called the Behelits, are a key of sorts that open the door into the astral realm. In a moment preordained by causality, the bearer or the true owner of the Behelit is able to activate it, opening a pathway between the physical and astral realm. This normally happens at the moment of their greatest despair, as their blood trickles down onto the Behelit and the facial features on the fetish rearrange themselves to resemble a human face. As its eyes open and widen as if in pain, it starts crying tears of blood, and with its mouth, it lets out an eerie scream, teleporting the bearer and all within its area of effect into another dimension. There, as if in response to its cries, the God Hand is summoned, and the individual that triggered the Behelit is given the option to shed their mortal form and transform into a demon known as an apostle. Normally, the God Hand would not be able to traverse the astral planes to reach this level due to the restrictions we mentioned earlier, but the Behelit circumvents this restriction as it opens up a gateway, a highway to hell, you might even say. In this moment, the person who activated the Behelit is given the choice to sacrifice who they would consider to be their most beloved person, and in doing so, giving up a part of their soul. Once the sacrifice is agreed upon, the person going to be sacrificed is branded with the brand of sacrifice, damning them to the abyss when they die. This results in the owner of the Behelit rising up as an apostle, a servant to the God Hand, who has given up their soul and has arisen to become a monstrosity that feeds on their fellow humans, free to live their lives unbound by the morality of mortals. We also know that a Behelit can be activated twice, although we don't know the true limit to the number of activations they can achieve. This is seen when the Slug Count, despite being an apostle, is able to activate his Behelit once again, which responds to his desperate desire to survive at the end of his battle with Guts at the end of the Black Swordsman arc. It's here that we find out about the nature of the sacrifice as well, because the Count tries to sacrifice Griffith to the God Hand to gain a new lease on life, but is unsuccessful. The God Hand refuses to accept the Count's offer because Guts, unlike his wife whom he sacrificed previously to ascend for the first time, is not someone who he holds dear on any level. The sacrifice, as stated earlier, has to be equivalent to someone losing a piece of their soul and humanity. Furthermore, Guts already has a brand of sacrifice, as he was marked by Griffith during his ascension during the events of the Fifth Eclipse. This poses an interesting question. If Guts were to have been successfully sacrificed by the Count, would the Count be considered twice reincarnated, just like Emperor Ganesha, who became one of the most powerful apostles of all time? We'll probably never know for sure, but as the series progresses, we find out that Behelits are not just keys that open gateways to the astral realm, but also powerful objects that have innate spiritual powers within them. This is proven by the fact that the Skull Knight has a sword made out of infused Behelits that seems to be not only capable of ripping apart the fabric of reality, but also is speculated to be strong enough to actually kill the God Hand. One must also note that Behelits seem to have some sort of sentience to them, as they react to the sudden influx of great evil in their vicinity. This is seen during Slan's appearance in Kliphof, Ganesha transforming into Shiva, and when the dead of Albion cry out for the new world, which is realized through Griffith's incarnation. The fetish is also seen reacting when it's handled roughly by Puck, appearing visibly uncomfortable. On occasion, a Behelit can also be seen looking through one of its eyes and staring at an individual. This goes to show that while there are certain conditions that need to be met for it to fully awaken and fulfill its purpose, the Behelit is never truly inert. It is very much alive, though the degree to which it is sentient hasn't been explored. What do Behelits look like? Their colors and different variations explored. In Berserk, all the Behelits for the most part shared the same basic appearance with the exception of the man-made Behelit and the Sword of Behelits. It's shaped like an egg with two eyes, a nose, and a mouth that's randomly arranged on its surface. Upon activation, these facial features rearrange themselves, making a Behelit resemble a human face with their eyes crying tears of blood along with a mouth that lets out a scream, forming an overall very disturbing image. While this is information that we've already stated, we want to point out that the Behelits also come in different colors. This is important because their coloration doesn't seem to be a random phenomenon that serves no purpose. They seem to come in a variety of colors, and we've seen them come in green, blue, yellow, and crimson. While the significance of the first three colors mentioned hasn't really been expanded upon beyond the fact that they can be used to summon the God Hands to create apostles, it seems unlikely that an author as meticulous as Kentaro Miura would color them such for just aesthetics. The final, Crimson Behelit, is of supreme importance, and the fact that he uses color to distinguish it from the rest suggests once more that the colors of a Behelit do have an important role to play in their classification and purpose. In this section, we're going to discuss the various important variants of the Behelits that stray from the norm. The Crimson Behelit. The Crimson Behelit shares much of the form and function of the other Behelits, but there are several things that set it apart. This Behelit, also known as the Egg of the King, is the only known Behelit to have a nickname. We know that Behelits find their way into the hands of people preordained by causality, but we see that upon serving its purpose, the Behelit can change hands. We see this with Guts and Puck currently possessing the Count's Behelit. It's still unknown, though, if the Behelit will respond to a second user if the right conditions are met. If it did respond, that wouldn't really be a surprise, as they are primarily meant to be the keys that open the door to the Astral Realm. The God Hand would also likely oblige the new owner of the Behelit with their audience, as it would be a guarantee that a sacrifice wouldn't be too far away. From then on, the Behelit would probably continue its journey through different hands. This is another place wherein lies the difference between an ordinary Behelit, although there is hardly anything ordinary about a creepy egg that drips blood from its eyes and opens portals to hell, and the Crimson Behelit. The Crimson Behelit is destined for the hands of one person only, and it will never have multiple owners. Through the machinations of causality, a person is determined to be worthy once every 250 years to join the ranks of the God Hand. It is unclear how many God Hand members can be there at a time, or if the members of their pantheon ever change, but this is what we're told. For instance, in the case of Griffith, there seems to be an apparent vacancy for a fifth member. The Crimson Behelit makes its way into the hands of such individuals deemed worthy and grants them the ability to kickstart an event known as the Eclipse. It is a unique trait of the Crimson Behelit wherein only it can trigger the eclipse through its awakening. Surprisingly, the circumstances for its activation are the same as those of any other Behelit. This Behelit is said to offer its owner the world itself in exchange for their flesh and blood, along with something they hold precious and dear to them. Therefore, it justifies its moniker, the Egg of the King, as through it, one essentially gains the power to live and do as one pleases and ascend to a form greater than that of even an apostle. Unlike during the ascension of an apostle, where only the members of the God Hand are there to witness the ritual, when the wielder of the Crimson Behelit begins to ascend, it is witnessed not just by the members of the God Hand, but also by numerous apostles who gather at the location. At this point, we're not sure if each member of the God Hand had their own Crimson Behelit, or if it was the same Behelit that appeared every time an individual was chosen by causality. In either case, the Crimson Behelit has been used by only a very select few individuals throughout the history of Berserk's world. This fetish is not just a tool, but also a very powerful symbol that marks those chosen individuals who are destined to leave their own mark on humanity. Without the Crimson Behelit, the story of Berserk as we know it would never have taken place. The laws of causality would perhaps never have pushed Griffith in such a self-destructive direction after Guts left, in order for him to become so broken that he ultimately uses this unearthly object to forsake his humanity. We might even have seen a happy ending for once in this god-forsaken land, and Guts might have been spared his role as the struggler. The Crimson Behelit is perhaps the greatest instrument of causality, even greater than the God Hand that exists within the Berserk universe. The Man-Made Behelit. The Man-Made Behelit doesn't look anything like the Behelit that you and I are used to seeing. Introduced in chapter 233 of the manga, it's the creation of the Kushana sorcerer Daiba, and he uses it to create an army of pseudo-apostle soldiers called the Daka for his apostle emperor Ganesha. Daiba holds an ambition to create a magical empire, and it aligns with Ganeshka's desire to rule the world. To fulfill each other's ambitions, the sorcerer creates what he calls the Man-Made Behelit. It is created by patching together the still living bodies of apostles into a horrific mass of flesh chained together and put into a large cauldron or vat filled with amniotic fluid from pregnant women. This unholy creation is also known as the demon womb due to the nature of its usage. These pseudo-apostles called the Daka are created by submerging pregnant women into the Man-Made Behelit, where the unborn children of these women come under the influence of the astral plane and the evil that resides within, making them burst forth from their mother's wombs as these monstrosities. With over 10,000 of these Daka, you can only imagine the number of innocent women that were sacrificed to give birth to these evil creatures. Being man-made, this Behelit cannot transform people into real apostles. It is, however, able to transform Ganesha into Shiva when he decides to use the Behelit on himself. This gives him the title of twice reincarnated, and changes his appearance and powers greatly. He does so to rival Griffith's powers as, despite being an apostle, Ganesha stood in opposition to the God Hand, especially Femto. For a human to even devise something like a Behelit, which is created in the abyss of the astral plane, speaks volumes about the genius of Daiba and his humanity in general. The audacity of transcending the natural order of things to create a device that attempts to take back control into human hands is a testament to man's ego and ingenuity. Despite Daiba's efforts to defy fate and create his own apostles, he is only able to create pale imitations of them. Also, his constructs would ultimately be an instrument for the creation of Fantasia, all in accordance with causality. The Sword of Behelits. The Sword of Behelits, or the Sword of Actuation, is a weapon wielded by the enigmatic Skull Knight. The Knight is able to coat his blade with a molten mass of Behelits, increasing its potency against inhuman beings. The Sword of Actuation is created using the Behelits that the Skull Knight is seen ingesting over the course of the series. It's seen cutting open rifts in reality into the Astral Realm, and it's capable of sending anything it hits directly into the Vortex of Souls. We know that when an apostle dies, their soul is dragged into the Vortex of Souls. This could prove to be the same for Femto and the God Hand. The spiritual energy stored within these Behelits could also provide enough power to outright slay them. This is shown when the redirected blow from the sword is powerful enough to slay the twice reincarnated Ganesha and trigger the great roar of the astral world, resulting in the merger of the astral and physical realms, a feat that even the supremely powerful members of the God Hand cannot achieve on their own. Skull Knight is also shown as being able to choose the layer of the astral plane he wants the sword to cut up to, thereby creating a portal for travel. This is shown when he cuts a rift through to the upper levels of Clip-Off, which he uses to escape along with Guts. The Skull Knight is supposedly even able to cut open portals through the astral realms, which grants him instantaneous travel between any 2 points in the physical realm. An interesting point to note is that during his attack on the Egg of the Perfect World in chapter 160, he notes that his sword refused to kill, remarking that perhaps it wasn't time to die yet. He distinctly says that his sword is held back, which means the Sword of Actuation has a certain mind of its own or is governed by the will of something other than the Skull Knight. It's one of the most unique forms a Behelit comes in the entire series. The Sword of Behelits undoubtedly has a larger role to play in the upcoming chapters of Berserk, and we might even see Guts wielding it himself. The Egg of the Perfect World. Perhaps the craziest iteration of a Behelit, the Egg of the Perfect World is, in fact, an apostle who is also a Behelit, though once again there are a few differences. The Egg of the Perfect World was an outcast from society since his birth. He had been shunned by his fellow human beings due to his nature and appearance. He had no one and nothing he could call his own. To hide from the rest of humanity, he dug himself a very deep hole near the base of the Tower of Conviction in Albion. There he remained alone, not knowing how much time had passed until one day someone threw a corpse down his hole. The people had forgotten of his existence and didn't know the hole belonged to him. It was used by the people of Albion to dump their dead. As the hole began to fill up, the Egg of the Perfect World slowly started dying, crushed beneath a pile of corpses in the darkness far below the earth, all alone, unloved, and forgotten. He had come into the possession of a Behelit during this time, and at that moment, it activated and summoned the God Hand. As we know, the God Hand requires a sacrifice worth one's soul or humanity in order for them to transform someone into an apostle. This individual had nothing but himself, having been forsaken by the world, so he sacrificed himself to be reborn as the Egg of the Perfect World, capable of birthing this individual who would, in turn, usher in the perfect world. His appearance resembles a Behelit with limbs. Unlike a Behelit, whose purpose is to transport others into the astral realm, the Egg of the Perfect World's real purpose is to open up a road for Griffith from the astral realm into the physical world. Just like a Behelit, he's activated by the despair of individuals, which in his case were the people in Albion all crying out in fear and trepidation as they watched their savior Mozgus fall even as they were swarmed by demons. In this case, these same people are sacrificed along with the Egg of the Perfect World himself for the incarnation of Griffith into the physical world, just like how, upon using a Behelit, the would-be apostle needs to sacrifice something. This is the only known case where the Behelit is a part of the sacrifice as well. The Egg of the Perfect World is one of the most bizarre characters even in an anime full of characters straight out of a nightmare. We know that the forms that the apostles take are often a twisted reflection of their dominant desire or character. The Egg of the Perfect World was given the form of an autonomous Behelit to birth Femto into the physical realm by the God Hand. I'm sure some of you know where we're going with this. The God Hand should not be able to create Behelits, yet here they are. They've created one, although it's not truly a traditional Behelit. Regardless, delving further into that would require an entire video of its own. Regardless, it's undeniable that the Egg of the Perfect World is a Behelit, even if it's not a perfect one. Who are the known owners of the Behelits? Well, we don't know the exact number of Behelits out there. We have seen some Behelits in the possession of certain individuals. It is widely known that all apostles and God Hand members possessed a Behelit at some point, but we haven't been shown all of those Behelits in their respective owners' hands. There are extensive videos on our channel for most of the characters discussed here, but for now, let's briefly go through the identities and characters of individuals whose Behelits we've seen in the series. Puck! Technically, the Behelit that is currently in the possession of Puck and Guts is the Slug Count. For all intents and purposes, the elf has claimed it for his own. There are several points in the series where he declares his ownership over the fetish. He even has a nickname for his Behelit, calling it his Becky. Puck is said to have even fed his Behelit cheese. No one else could claim such a feat, not even the God Hand. Puck and his Behelit have spawned some wild fan theories and memes that suggest he's going to sacrifice everyone, including the audience, during his ascension into an apostle. I mean, that's chilling stuff. For now though, the only one in trouble is Becky, as we're shown the Behelit expressing discomfort numerous times with the way Puck handles it. The world rests easy knowing that Puck's Behelit lies dormant for yet another day. Skull Knight! The enigmatic skeletal warrior Skull Knight is in possession of a multitude of Behelits. He is seen ingesting numerous Behelits that he comes across during the course of the series. His true origins are a mystery that is known perhaps only to the witch Flora and Nosferatu Zod. The knight is supposedly close to 1,000 years old and has been on a quest to destroy evil, including the God Hand. He is also the former owner of the Berserker armor, which is currently in the possession of Guts. It's unclear how many Behelits exactly he has in his possession, but as mentioned earlier, he's able to transform them into a blade that is able to rip holes into the very fabric of the Astral Realm. For now, we have to wait and see where the Skull Knight's journey will take him, or even if his quest will ever end. Emperor Ganesha. He's the emperor of the Kushan Empire and desires to take control of the world. He believes fear is the most effective power to control things and as such seeks to use it to bring the world under his heel. Ganesha is also an apostle and he was given his Behelit by his advisor and sorcerer Daiba, the very same Daiba that would become responsible for the creation of the man-made Behelit and the Daki. Ganesha would submerge himself into this man-made Behelit and emerge as the twice reincarnated apostle towering above the rest of humanity. The interesting aspect of Ganesha's character is that, unlike the other apostles who serve the God Hand, he's in direct opposition to them. He believes that only he is worthy of ruling the world, and to this end, he hates Griffith more than most. Ganesha is one of the more fascinating characters in the entire series. Slug Count. Guts encounters this apostle during the events of the Black Swordsman arc, where he serves as its final antagonist. The Count's Behelit is seen to be in the possession of Vargas, his former physician. The apostle, during his days as a human, lived in relative happiness with his daughter and wife, both of whom he loved dearly beyond reason. He was greatly opposed to the heretical pagans that infested his lands and would go on expeditions to destroy them. After returning from one such campaign, to his horror, he found his loving wife in the midst of a pagan orgy. He has the heretics rounded up and executed, but cannot bring himself to kill his wife. The wife, knowing this, gives him a sinister smile. Drowned in despair, the Count is at his lowest and tries to take his own life when his blood falls on his Behelit and it responds to his emotions by activating. He sacrifices his heretical wife and devours her, becoming an apostle of the God Hand. It's interesting to note that the Slug Count is present among the apostles during the events of the 5th eclipse. Rosine. We are shown Rosine's Behelit during the Conviction arc where she serves as an antagonist. Before she became an apostle, she was a naive young girl who her father suspected of being a bastard of an enemy soldier who had raped her mother. Due to this, she was extremely ill-treated by her father and abused almost daily. One day, no longer able to endure the abuse, she runs off to find the elves who supposedly lived in a nearby forest in a land of eternal happiness. She would wait for days, but in the end, she didn't find any elves. Instead, her parents would find her. Her infuriated father would start beating her up for shaming him in front of the village, and when her mother tried to intervene, her father assaulted her instead. Filled with despair at finding out that her beliefs were a mere myth and seeing that her life would never change, she fulfills the conditions required to activate her Behelit. Rosine is then transformed into an apostle who closely resembles an elf. She begins terrorizing her village, abducting young children and transforming them into her minions. She is eventually defeated by Guts in one of the most tragic arcs of the entire manga. Her Behelit is then ingested by the Skull Knight. Griffith. Once a low-born commoner, Griffith would come into possession of the Crimson Behelit, also known as the Egg of the King from an old fortune teller. Griffith would eventually rise up as a peerless warrior and bring together the Band of the Hawk, a group of mercenaries who would align with him to achieve their dreams by helping him achieve his. He would constantly carry the Behelit along with him throughout his life, believing it to be his lucky charm, if only he knew the truth. The Behelit would eventually leave his possession when he was tortured for having sex with Princess Charlotte. He would be rescued by Guts and his comrades, but would be nothing more than a broken husk. Upon seeing his dreams slip away and being filled with envy for Guts, the Crimson Behelit mysteriously appears before him once again, and it responds to him, triggering the events of the 5th eclipse. The rest, as they say, is history. He would initiate the ritual that would make him transcend the limits of mortality and join the ranks of the God Hand. In doing so, he would sacrifice all the members of the Band of the Hawk, including Guts and Casca, who were rescued by the Skull Knight even as everyone else perishes. Marvelous verdict! As Shirke's master, the witch Flora, explains, Behelits are currently the most powerful objects that exist in the world. They are not mere keys to the astral realm, but fetishes that control the destiny of human beings. Even those who study the astral realm, like the witches, don't have a true idea of where or whom these objects receive their power from. They are the true and direct enforcers of causality because, without them, the God Hand wouldn't exist, nor would the destinies of their owners be altered. The motif of a cosmic egg is pervasive throughout the various myths of our own reality and could have inspired the creation of the Behelits. From the Pelasgian creation myth of Greece that centered around the cosmic egg of your enemy, the egg of Ra from Egyptian mythology, Pangu's egg from Chinese mythology, and the egg of chaos from Japanese mythology, there are many examples of cosmic eggs in religion. Its role as the progenitor of life, or the beginning of things, perfectly aligns with Berserk, albeit in a twisted fashion. Through the use of a Behelit, a new life is given to an individual, especially with the creation of Femto, both through the Crimson Behelit and his incarnation from the egg of the perfect world. It heralds the ushering in of a new age for humanity. While Guts is the central protagonist of the series, without whom one might argue Berserk loses its identity, therefore making him paramount to the story's existence in its current form, the Behelits are perhaps second only to him, because without them, most of the plot wouldn't exist either. They're not only responsible for the reincarnation of beings like the Apostles and the God Hand, but also in the creation of the story itself. Therein lies the true genius of Kentaro Miura. We hope that this legendary work is done justice and receives an ending befitting its stature and the author's vision. And with this video, we hope we were able to grant you a proper guide to the nature of Behelits in the series. The beautiful thing about Berserk is that it is so densely packed that even 3 decades after its release, you constantly discover new things upon rereading it. This is why fans still continue to discover and discuss new lore and theories and their interpretation regarding the source material's meaning. There is always more to read regarding people's diverse interpretations of Berserk. We love hearing theories and ideas, even if they deviate from our own understanding of what we took away from Miura's seminal work, as it goes to show the depth of Berserk that we all love. For now though, it's time to say goodbye as we've come to the end of this video. We cover a lot of Berserk on our channel, so if this video piqued your interest, we definitely recommend you check the rest of our channel out. This is your narrator, Wheezy249, signing off, but you can always find me on Twitch. We can't wait to see you in our next video, but until then, stay safe and stay marvelous.